Hello once again, and thank you for joining. Thank you for all the participants for joining us and all those beautiful ladies who have been with us since morning. Thank you so much for engaging and for participating and making our the summit more lively and more engaging. And today at this session, I'm so honored to be joined by Dr. Jen Fraser. She is one of my most favorite ones. She has amazing knowledge about neurosciences, brain sciences, and she talks more about like how to prevent bullying. She is an author, educator, international presenter who specializes in transforming bullying and abuse culture into healthy, high-performing ones. Drawing on brain science, she challenges outdated myths and belief systems, replacing them with research-driven strategies for positive, sustainable change. Her empowering and inspiring approach shows that true transformation is possible when we understand how the brain works. So thank you so much for joining, Dr. Jen, and I've been looking forward to this session.
Thank you so much, Ambreen. It's always just a pleasure to support any initiative you and your team are involved in.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for your insight. And today's this session's topic is leaders who heal versus leaders who harm. And we'll understand that what neuroscience reveals about the healthcare culture, which is prevailing throughout. So let's begin our discussion. So first, let me ask that, especially Dr. Jen, that you study bullying and abuse culture. And how does like corporate or the top level bullying manifest uniquely within especially healthcare organization? We see a lot of bullying, a lot of this culture is prevailing at the top level. So just tell us a bit more about it, that how it is prevailing, it is impacting the healthcare culture and organization.
Yeah, well, essentially what happens if we look at it from a medical point of view, not a moral point of view, and not to say that the moral point of view isn't important, but it just can be very helpful sometimes to look at it through a brain science lens rather than an ethical one. So what happens, what I've been hearing a lot about from people who are doctors and nurses and medical support staff is that the medical profession itself, and this is not surprising in our culture because we live in a culture of normalized bullying. We have had it hammered into us from a very early age, essentially ways that are completely false. In terms of what's actually going on when we see bullying and abuse cultures. So first of all, from a very young age, we're taught that those who are bullying or harming or maltreating have a lot of power. Now that's completely false. They don't have a lot of power. If anything, they're highly compromised individuals, even as children, they're acting out a great deal of psychological trauma. And rather than being treated as if they have a medical condition, they're treated as if they are somehow bad people, which is only going to reinforce the trauma that they're already in. So if you take just our childhood experiences, the completely false way that we're told to interpret the dynamic, and then go all the way to one of our most advanced professions, which is healthcare, it's not actually that surprising that we're starting to see adults who have been trained in a particular situation, wired to believe certain things, still trapped in that same framework. And they actually, because it's being habituated, which is a brain science word, it's habituated by the brain. Our brains will normalize or habituate anything that happens over and over and over again. Our brains don't decide whether it makes sense or it's good or it's bad. It's just the repetition. So if you are a medical student and you are maltreated by your teachers, the doctors that are, ushering you and initiating you and assisting you or mentoring you into the profession, and they are highly aggressive and they humiliate you and they like to shame you in front of your peers, and you get accustomed to carrying this stress load, you are going to start to manifest it yourself. And it's a chicken and egg thing. Who's at fault here? The doctor? Well, that doctor was also trained in this same framework. So what's exciting is, this is all very depressing, I know, but what's very exciting and very empowering is that brain science has taught us we are innately wired to change. our brains they can do anything we want them to do once we have the will and the understanding and the capacity to commit to a new way of being. So I have very high hopes for healthcare of all things, of all professions, to lead the way in recognizing that we can't continue in this outdated framework of bullying and abuse.
Yes, I mean, I think that's the one hope we have, that there used to be a myth that at certain age when you reach to that level, your brain cannot change. There are lots of myths that they used to say that that when you learn everything by the age of 7, then we get to know that your brain cannot change after the age of 30 or 40 or 50. But now the researchers have shown that our brain is capable of changing itself at any point in time, at any age, be at 7 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50, and even 90 years, you are able to change your brain. So I think that's the hope that we have, that we can actually change into a better being and to be able to heal ourselves. So just tell us a bit about that. What neuroscience tell us about the impact of bullying on human brain, both for the individuals being targeted and for those who witness it?
What has certainly was not taught to me, and I had to learn myself by reading the neuroscience research, is that it's well established now in the literature that all forms of bullying and abuse and harassing, all psychological forms, all behaviors like emotional neglect, any of the things that do not touch the body, what most people don't know is they are still doing physical damage to the brain. That physical damage is visible on a brain scan. So if you're a bystander or an observer witness of this type of traumatizing behavior occurring, there's nothing to protect you from also manifesting on a physical level in your brain architecture the trauma that is unfolding, even if you're not targeted. And also, if you participate in the bullying and the abuse, then you are doing damage not only to the target's brain, but also to your own brain. So every single person, from the bully to the bystander, the beneficiary, and the victim, all are having their brains simultaneously harmed. And most people just don't know that. We're not taught that in school. We're not taught that at university or in the workplace. We're taught to act as if this type of behavior is going to toughen us up, make us have grit, give us resilience. It's going to break us down and build us back up in the image of what the workplace wants us to be. I mean, all of that, as you say, Ambreen, it's myths. Those are very unfortunate myths. They're not at all true in science. And just to reiterate the key point that you make, we used to think it was actually a Nobel Prize winning scientific breakthrough that said, oh, brains don't change past sort of 5, 6. And they won the prize for it. But in actual fact, as Ambreen points out, our brains are capable of significant change all the way until our very last breath on the planet. That's the most remarkable thing about our brains. So we can do anything we want. We can create workplaces to be full of carry tasks if we want, to use Darlene's, vital insight into how we need to change.
Yeah, I mean, this is and this is why, I mean, as like we're seeing the comments also, this is so much needed, that we're not taught that that what happens to, what damage it does when we even see the bully that bullying someone, and we internalize that fear. Although if we are not even in that culture itself, but we're just seeing that, internalize that fear, and it damages our brain in that way. So just tell us a bit about more that how we can actually protect our brain from that bullying, or maybe train our brain to whenever, like, either being in the situation of being bullied or seeing someone who's being bullied, or in that environment, what steps we need to actually take to protect ourselves from that damage.
Well, the very first thing to do is, if you see somebody behaving in a bullying way, you want to identify their behavior publicly, or just perhaps with them, depending obviously on the situation and how much of a leadership role you're in. I mean, you have to be very cautious and wise and careful and gentle in these kinds of crises. But what you do want to do is establish, before you even see any of these behaviors, you need to establish that it's well understood in the workplace community that this type of behavior is, you don't have to do the big ethical thing. It's not tolerated. We have zero tolerance. That's not helpful. That's like saying we have zero tolerance for COVID-19. It's like, well, that's nice, but that's not going to stop the virus. It's not going to stop the contagion. It's not going to protect anybody. And it's also not going to look at cures and remedies and healing and recovery. When you look at it from an ethical lens, then your response is punishment. This person must be punished. And that it gets us nowhere. As we all know, we're just trapped in this complete circle of this kind of abusive behavior. So what everyone needs to understand from the get-go is that when people are manifesting bullying behaviors, it's because they're suffering from mental trauma. They're suffering from mental illness, and they're not powerful, and that's why they instantly need help. If someone is yelling and screaming, you're looking at someone who's dysregulated. If somebody is needing to humiliate or shame somebody, you know that you're dealing with someone who has trauma. It's quite likely it's visible on a brain scan. They need to get immediate help. They need support, they need recovery. It's like witnessing someone that has addiction. If they have an addiction problem, they come into work on a substance, or they imagine a doctor comes into work or a nurse comes into work and they've been consuming alcohol. Well, that's very serious. They need to go to a retreat. They need intensive intervention. They need care. They need to be totally supported in recovery so that they can come back and fulfill their potential and be part of the community again. They are ill. They're very ill. So same thing with anybody who's manifesting highly aggressive, extremely harmful, manipulative, and destructive behaviors. We know we have so much psychology and psychiatry that has trained us to know that these people come from almost guaranteed extreme abuse and neglect. So let's get them better.
Yeah, and it's to be honest here, like what we see is mostly the other way around. It's mostly the who someone who's been bullied has been like given all the therapies and then all the things, and the bullies are usually like either they're punished and then after that they're all free to do whatever they want to do. So this is a very strange, I would say, that in the society we are living in, that the bullies are not treated, whereas the ones who are being bullied, they've been given all the therapies, although they are the innocent people, although they need therapies as well. But as you rightly pointed out, that they need to be treated as well. And so especially like when we look at the healthcare scenario, right, where what is happening is that there is like what David Dibble also said, that the POP culture, right? People over profit, like a profit over people. This is what is causing burnout, severe. I would say that people who are the healthcare provider, who are genuinely want to work and to help people, they are under stress. So what do you recommend? How do they deal with these kind of, I would say, in that culture, the culture which is draining them? What are the steps you recommend for them to deal with that kind of culture?
Well, when you are in a workplace where the leadership is putting profit before people, you have a huge leadership problem. Because, and again, all problems are relevant to the brain, because it's the brain that does the leading. That you're not leading with the body, you're leading with the brain. So instantly you say, if you've got a leadership construct like that, you have to ask the question, what's going on in the brain of a leadership community that believes that money comes before human beings, even though you're in the business of caring for the health and well-being of humans? You're not in the business of caring for the health and well-being and robustness of money. So when you're in a business, it's about people, but you don't care about people, you have a big brain problem. So if we took a look at the brains of people that operate that way, we would see two things. First of all, the research shows that the more power you gain, the less empathy you have in your brain. It is an inverse relationship. It's a seesaw. So when we have somebody who has extreme power, like they're the head of a massive healthcare organization, we have to have, our hearts need to go out to them, because in order to run this complex organization, their empathy has to be put on the back burner. They need to surround themselves with the most empathic people who can guide, counsel, and lead them in order to run a healthy organization. And that doesn't mean they have to compromise the profit. That's going to, if anything, increase profits, because they're not going to lose tons of money in retraining. They're not going to lose money because their talent is going out the door. They're not going to have doctors and nurses who are taking their lives, which we know has become a colossal issue in the health department. They're going to have far better patient care. I mean, there is no reason, if you want to run a really fabulous organization that it earns enough money to care for everybody and properly compensate them, as well as give you, high earnings, because your job is actually pretty stressful and hard. All you need to do is, if you've got the power to make the big, huge decisions, you need a team of people where, if we could look at their brains through an fMRI, we would say that they have highly active affective empathy. And that empathy, just to remind everybody, that empathy is our brain's capacity to feel someone else's pain, to make decisions based on how they see the world, the shoes that they walk in. When you make a decision about a nurse, you're thinking about what a 12 or more hour workplace day or night is like. You're not making a decision because it's about something as abstract and selfish as money. That's empathy. And the more power you have, the less empathy. So you're not making the right decisions. You're making decisions only about money because you're no longer walking in the shoes of your doctors and nurses and medical support staff. So that is a way that we could fix this instantly. This seemingly intractable problem is not. And I have more to say on that. Can I say two more things?
Sure, sure.
There are two people that I know that I work closely with who have absolutely brilliant approaches to this. One is David Dibble, who works very specifically on hospital systems, and he has system science that shows exactly how to address the systemic issues quickly, efficiently, and in ways that allow a sustainable solution that activates a whole bunch of kindness. I also have Robin Simpson is a close colleague who works on the science of kindness. And the science of kindness, as many people on this call today, on this conversation know, it's an inexpensive game changer. It heals, it boosts health, it creates happiness. It is the key to high performance.
Yes, that's amazing. I mean, really, I mean, the way you explained it, it's really amazing. Now, like, especially the culture of healthcare is kind of prevailing, like the toxic leadership, I would say, is prevailing for quite long. So how does the prolonged exposure to toxic leadership affect decision-making, empathy, and resilience, especially like in the core healthcare delivery system?
Well, resilience is another one of those key words that is, unfortunately, operates under a big myth as well. Because like we were saying before, a lot of people, they don't like to say it out loud, but they believe that resilience comes from being really tough on people, tough love, really disciplining them and pushing them out of their comfort zone. All of these kinds of words that we use are actually highly inaccurate. 40 years of research shows that resilience comes from caring relationships, number one, high expectations, number two, and three, opportunities. So if you are the CEO of a healthcare organization, those are the three things you're looking for. If you want to retain talent, you want to attract talent, you don't want to have people with too many sick days, you want high expectations for patient care. Everything gets answered by you understanding that the fundamental core to everything, including with yourself and how you interact with every single person, is caring relationships. So if we, just the fact that we even have to use the word toxic when we're talking about healthcare, everybody should automatically see how that's indicative of a culture that's gone crazy. It's insane. It doesn't make sense that if you want to create health, you allow for toxicity. Toxicity is the opposite of health. So we need to kind of turn this ship around.
Yeah, that's very true. I think it's just that we need to shift the perspective and then start looking at this. And you rightly said that, especially the word resilience is very much misused, and then it is like giving people the way to actually to accept abuse or a bullying as a, it normalized thing. So I think we need to have the clear definition that, resilience is not linked with, accepting the abuse or becoming tough by just by accepting what is toxicity is. So I want to ask that what do you think, what strategies backed by neurosciences can help healthcare organizations shift from abuse culture to healthy and high performing ones?
Well, I think what we need to do is change the leadership model, first of all, which is not really as difficult as it sounds. So the leadership model has, unfortunately, that has been dominant for a long time, decades now, is coercion and control, or command and control. We see it everywhere. And we make the mistake of thinking that somebody who is cool and calm and collected and icy and rational is a healthy person with a healthy brain, because oftentimes they're not. That's actually, those are many of the traits that we find in psychopaths. So again, if you look at a psychopath's brain and how they respond to the world and to other people, if you looked at them through an fMRI machine or MRI and you used an EEG, you would see that they have eroded or damaged affective empathy. Just a quick reminder, empathy is when you walk in someone else's shoes. You feel their pain, you feel their joy. So if you have eroded affective empathy in your brain, you're the kind of person who has no problem bombing civilians. You don't have any problem making decisions that cause people who are already poor to become more poor. You have no problem allowing people to starve. None of these, you don't care about imprisoning people who are innocent and just kind of desperate, like a migrant or an immigrant. These are the sorts of callous behaviors that leadership can make that are extremely destructive. And you can only make those decisions when actually you have brain damage, because the rest of the people with healthy brains, even reading about it in the newspaper is an anguishing, painful, gut-wrenching experience. The young people call it, as we all know, doom scrolling. In other words, we respond to this type of action as doom. It's going to doom all of us and doom the planet. But the people that do it, they don't feel that. And until we can have an open conversation about the fact that these individuals, they don't feel guilt, they don't feel anguish, they don't feel remorse, they don't feel grief, they don't feel love, they don't feel kindness, they don't have those things. And so when you put them in an fMRI and you show them pictures of starvation and war and children on boats that are refugee boats that drown, you show them all those images, their brain does not light up in the affective empathy circuits, and it doesn't light up in the emotional regions of the brain. A healthy brain does, their brain doesn't. And that should be, everybody who is in a position of power needs to have that check, because they're good at pretending. They're very good at being wolves in sheep's clothing. They're very good at being false prophets. They get cult-like followings. They know how to manipulate. And so we need to know what's going on in their brain before we give them immense power. It's very, very serious, as we're seeing in the world today, not just in healthcare, but geopolitically. And so, and I mean, the truth of it is, can those kinds of brains be rehabilitated? We don't even try. We're not a society that puts every ounce of effort into reclaiming a brain that is harmed in that way. And how does a brain get harmed in that way? Through abuse and neglect. There's more factors to it. There's genetics, there's other complexities. But the bottom line is, how does a brain get hurt like that? Through abuse and neglect. But I don't see a society that has all that information changing how children are raised, how parents are supported, how all kinds of money and care and upstream energy is put into the most important years of a person's life to develop a healthy brain. So can we move from command and control, coercion, control, leadership? Absolutely. Because as we said at the beginning, we all have the capacity to change our brains collectively and individually. So if collectively we decide, we look around the world and go, this isn't working for us, we can't keep damaging people and the planet, we're going to self-destruct. Maybe we need a new leadership model. What would we like it to look like? Well, it needs to be, highly able to make these complex decisions, and it needs to be highly empathic. Oh, we're missing the empathy. We need an empathy council that informs all decisions.
Yes, I love that. I absolutely love that. We really we need the change in leadership. And what you propose is really much needed at this time, that we need to actually, we need to heal them as well. But now it leads me to another question, that I know that, we need to change the leadership, but it will take a lot of time. But what about those that who have been exposed to bullying, and how they can heal from the experience of bullying?
There is extensive science, as I draw on for the bullied brain, on how to recover. And
Mhm.
the extensive neuroscience teaches us that things that, again, don't cost a lot of money, they're not easy, they're hard work, but they are doable by all of us, that do wonders for brains when they've been harmed. I'm just going to list them. Aerobic fitness is incredibly healthy for your brain. Talk about resilience. It helps you resist the harm from maltreatment, and it also heals the maltreatment in the brain. And it's amazing. So, aerobic fitness. Mindfulness. Now, we've known in ancient culture in the East for thousands of years that mindfulness is really good for the brain, and the neuroscientists have generated a ton of research that completely supports that. If you've been bullied and abused, if you've suffered other traumas, you can do wonders, miracles for your brain by committing to 20 minutes or more a day of mindfulness. And if you don't know how mindfulness works, you just go online. There's a million guided tours, explanations, fabulous information on how to do it. So 20 minutes aerobic fitness, 20 minutes of mindfulness, 20 minutes of connection. We can co-regulate one another's stress. That, because we're mammals, we're very good at anything like you're looking into someone else's eyes, mirroring them, empathic listening, putting your arm around their shoulders, holding their hand, any of these kinds of things, using a very a sing-song voice. When you think of how you talk to a pet or to a baby or a child, you're like, who's the cutest little one? Believe it or not, that our brains and nervous systems instantly respond to that, because it means that you care, that you love, that you're safe, that you are going to help the person get their stress levels down. So that was just 1 hour a day. Those are remarkably well documented ways to enhance your brain health. And I'm just going to give you one more. Here's another half an hour. So now we're up to an hour and a half a day, and we could all have the healthiest, most high performing brains on the planet if we did this. Half an hour. Go online to Brain HQ. So Brain HQ, Brain Headquarters. It's designed by Dr. Michael Merzenich and a team of international brain scientists.
Mhm.
And not only does it do wonders for brains that have been harmed, it also strengthens very, very high performing brains. So the US military uses it, the Italian army uses it, elite athletes use it. Why? Because they want to boost their brain performance. And so all of us can do it, though. Half an hour a day. It's super cheap, and it's gamified. It's hard work. It's like working out in the gym. It's not, I don't want to make it sound like it's easy and fun, because it's not. It's hard work, but it's worth every moment of suffering. It's really good for you.
Yes, I mean, that's amazing. The word, every moment of suffering, I really like that thing, because I think that suffering that makes us strong in that way. Sometimes, and I think that, brain is also a muscle. Like the more we train our brain, or more we use our brain, the more it is strengthened. It's just like any other muscle, like we go to gym to, strengthen our body. So it's just like, we need to use our mind. And like, it's reminds me of something, is a quote that, mind is like a parachute. It works better when it's open. So I think we need to start opening our mind and start using it more and more, so it can actually work better. I know that you've worked on courageous kindness, as you mentioned, with David Dibble and Robin Simpson, and that model is actually meant to kind of heal the system. So tell us about your courageous kindness, that how it is meant to heal the system, especially healthcare.
Yeah, it's a process. So you start out with understanding why kindness, or whichever word you use, kindness is, as it's love in action. It's caritas. It's agape. It is this way of being in the world that you consciously choose. And when you're very, very kind, you end up saying things that require bravery. Like I've said a bunch of things on this interview and this discussion that required me to say things that are really upsetting to some people and that make people feel afraid or make them feel defensive. But if you don't have that courage, as Robin Simpson will stress with you, if you don't have it, you're not actually being kind. You're kind of taking a pass. You're not using these skills that you have to truly lead your own self-regulated behavior and lead your community. And so David is, and I have learned so much from David Dibble. He has an utterly remarkable track record of going into healthcare organizations and hospitals and completely turning them around so that the people are healthy again. They've worked all together. It's a very much a community support from like a community interaction. It's not asking the leadership, how do we change this? It's not. It's asking everyone on the ground, what's going wrong? What's the most important thing that's going wrong? Let's get it all up on the board here and let's talk about how we can change the systems, because it's the systems that cause 80–90% of the stress. And then when the stress is trickling down to individuals, we see them acting out. And this is where you get a lot of bullying, you get maltreatment, you get stress, you get people who are avoiding things, your flight. They're not coming into work, flight. They're completely paralyzed and unable to speak up about wrongdoing or patient harm or anything. They're frozen. And then there are the aggressive people who respond to all these stressors with bullying, with fight mode. So we all know those stress responses, but we don't remember them often enough when we're in a stressful situation. We just think that the person's being either horrible or they're copping out or they're weak or all of these different labels that we put on each other. Actually, what we are is a bunch of stressed out people that aren't coping. So David Dibble comes in and works on the system science. Robin Simpson comes in and works on the courage. She works on the science of kindness with a bunch of practical tools, how to make it an intentional act every single time you're doing stuff with people. And then I sort of shine the spotlight on the stress response in the form of bullying.
Yes, I think that model really is amazing because it covers all the aspect which healthcare needs at this time, that that how one can actually cope up with bullying, how then you can heal the system, and how you can actually bring the positivity. So I think with the kindness, and that requires courage. So that's how it is, the courageous kindness. And I also want to ask that, especially your book is coming up, the new book, The Gaslit Brain. So one thing which I know that a lot of people have in the mind, that what is the difference between bullying and the gaslighting? Because it's sometimes often confused, or you use it, it's like usually it's used like bullying is used for gaslighting and gaslighting is for bullying. So we don't know much about it. So tell us a bit more about it, that what is the difference between these two terminologies?
So bullying in general is when an individual, we'll call them the bully in this moment, the bully is trying to create a display for other people so that they disrespect you, they don't think you belong, that you are not worthy. So they're doing a lot of behaviors, they're saying a lot of things, they're doing a lot of cyberbullying, they're using images, whatever it is that they do, they'll do anything. But their goal is to make other people not trust you and disrespect you and think that you're a very worthless person. Gaslighting is different in that the gaslighter is trying to make you feel that way about yourself. They want you to doubt yourself, to think that you're crazy, to think that you aren't to be trusted. So it's two different mechanisms, but it's almost, Ambreen, we could say it's like two sides of one coin. And they often go hand in hand, bullying and gaslighting.
Yeah, I think so. So what do you think? What is more prevalent in healthcare system? It's more bullying prevalent or gaslighting prevalent?
It can be both. I mean, like I said, they oftentimes can be entwined. So, for example, in a workplace that I was at, I reported psychological and physical abuse that was being done by 4 colleagues. And I went to the leadership and I said, "This is what's happening. These are the reports. There's 14 victims that have given detailed testimonies. This kind of thing." And the leadership at my workplace gaslit me. So they said to me, "Oh, That's, that's not abuse. And why are you using that word? That word could actually really hurt somebody's career. It's not abuse. It's just a old school coaching. So you see what happens in that moment is, as the person that's being gaslit, I say to myself, oh, I don't really understand reality. I'm making a perception error. I'm thinking that abuse is occurring because I'm crazy or I'm hysterical or I'm too sensitive, when everybody else, including the leader, who's my boss, who pays my salary and has total control over my career at present, that person is telling me that I'm out of line. In fact, there's a kind of an implied threat in what he's saying, because what he's really saying to me is, here's what is happening. I'm going to give you the words to use, and you are going to either repeat them, or you might not be a good fit here anymore.
Yeah, I think you explained it very well. So before we actually close our discussion, I would just ask you if you could give one actionable tool to a clinician working under bullying leadership and one to healthcare CEO trying to reform the culture, what would be the one advice for them?
For the clinician, I would say there is power in numbers. So the tool for the clinician, for the nurse, for medical support staff of all kinds is you need to work as a team. There's power in numbers. This is why unions are effective. You get together, you are the majority, and you tell the leadership, which is the minority, that it's unacceptable, it's unhealthy, it's not high performance, and it's not doing anything good for the health organization itself. In fact, it erodes profits, while at the same time, the higher ups are desperately trying to get more profits. It's a dysfunctional system. It's a broken down system, which is David Dibble's expertise. So that's what I would say to a clinician. Power in numbers is your tool. Get together with everybody, rally them, and be a collective voice. And then also for the leader, as I was saying before, leadership, it has to be absolutely informed by a sense of fiduciary duty, a sense of care, a sense of empathic listening. If you are so powerful that you are at such a high level, then again, as we said before, you surround yourself with a council, and you do not make any decisions without their input, because your empathy is no longer front and center because of the difficult decisions you need to make and processes you need to handle. So you don't want to be making any errors that are really harmful to people and harmful to the organization. So you need to have a council of empaths that advise you at every turn.
Yes, absolutely. So I think with that, thank you so much for all your insights and this amazing information about that, how bullying can damage brain and how it can impact the one that who's been bullied. So this is, and especially like sharing very practical strategies to deal with all the bullying and the gaslighting and everything. So I leave that floor up to the to the all people, that if you have any questions, that especially if you want to ask that how we can make our healthcare system better, or any questions or any comment if you have, please share, or we can all continue the conversation anyways. So if anybody has any question. There have been a lot of comments here, like in the chat. Like Amber is also saying this also speaks to why that there are all types of leader needed empathy. Yes, I think we all need, our leaders need empathy at this time, because I think we've seen enough of the bullying from the top leadership. And I think for this, I think actually this one question that's coming to my mind at this moment, Dr. Jen, that we see a lot of bullying from the top leadership. I know that we can't just say that we need they need to have this council of empathetic leader, but how we can actually create the waves of change around them, because they are not going to listen if they are in the power. If they have this, they are not changing their mind. What do you think that what what can we do at this moment to make them realize that they need to be changed?
I think that if you have a leader that behaves in ways that would end up having a child go to the principal's office,
Yeah,
or would cause a child's parents to call into the school and demand a meeting with the administrators and other parents and the child that is targeting, and being really unhealthy and waving the red flag of being unstable and manifesting cruelty. If you are the leader of an organization and you're displaying those same behaviors and gaslighting the people that you deal with into thinking that it's somehow a sign of power and leadership, that's a quick and easy test for yourself. And unfortunately though, for these, I mean, it's really quite remarkable. As I was working on the gaslit brain, I was looking at abuse cultures, and what we do not talk about but needs to be talked about, and it can be easily dealt with through a brain scan, is we need to ensure that our leaders do not have the traits of the dark triad. We know that psychopaths and narcissists and Machiavellians have very specific brain traits. They are identified, they're researched, they're understood, and yet we still act as if there's no way to understand whether or not someone is going to be a healthy, safe, high performing leader, or they're going to be someone who actually destroys the organization, the people in it, and leaves an absolutely traumatic legacy. Like, I just don't understand why we aren't doing that. It used to be that you'd have to write psychological tests when you went into leadership positions for all kinds of corporations. But the psychological test is very easy to manipulate if you're a psychopath. That's what
yeah,
they do. They're brilliant manipulators. Now, Michael Merzenich, Dr. Michael Merzenich, one of the most highly awarded neuroscientists alive today, he said to me, brain scans don't lie. And I think that that is what we need to do. We need, when we have a leadership issue, geopolitically, as well as in corporations and organizations, we have the right to see the brain scan and hear it described by experts. Why wouldn't we? What are they afraid of? Why do they want to cover it up? That should be a pressing leadership question today.
yeah. I think we should be, we should have courage to ask that. I mean, that, they need to show the brain scan. They need to prove that at least they are the healthy enough to lead. And I think that's the basic right. All of us have that right, of the right of all the healthy people, that at least we need to ask that we are not led by psychopaths, right? I think this is something that we start need, and we need to gather this courage to actually ask this question. And I think I really love that one advice that you give, that the one advice that you give to the clinician is, or it should be for everyone, because the majority is the ordinary people like us, that who are, I would say, healthy or innocent or like this, that we are far more in number, right? They may have power, but as people, like, we are more in power. So we need to combine our efforts. That when we start combining our efforts, once we know that we are not alone, and if we are suffering one in number, then there are lots of other people suffering. And then when we join hand, only then we are able to actually to remove those kind of leadership which are actually harming instead of developing.
So, Ambreen, just to reinforce what you're saying there, which is very important, it's in this moment that we have to remember that bullying cultures, abuse cultures, are constructed on divide and conquer. That's
Mm,
why they use fear, they use humiliation, and they use favoritism. The
yeah.
favoritism is to ensure that they develop a crew of people around them that will reinforce their completely destructive and harmful
Yeah.
policies. And those favorites benefit from the harm and abuse done to victims. And so you end up with them creating a majority, if you will, that will then turn on the others. And this is where, like, it's just so indicative that it's not a healthy culture, because really, as you say, everybody should be working with the common goal of patient care, with caring for each other, with ensuring that the leadership is supported. Like, where are all those caring, compassionate, healthy values. Like, why are they missing? If they are missing, you have an abuse culture on your hands, and it should be addressed instantly.
Yes, absolutely. I really love that. And I can't agree more on that, especially I really like that you brought it, that they create this divide and conquer this culture, and they do it by favoritism, by actually, and I think it's just, again, they are actually damaging the brain of them, the other one also, by doing the favoritism. They don't realize the one that who are being favored, if they are favored wrongly, they become the part of the bullying culture. And they might not be bullies, but then since they are getting like the advantage, which is not required, this is not genuine, then actually they become the part of bullying culture. So they need to also realize that if something is not right, they need to come up and they need to say that, this is not right, and they need to have that rationality, and they need to have that justice for everyone. It's not for for few people. So I think it balances out the entire culture and creates a healthy culture. So I really love that. Yeah. So anyways, thank you so much. I think it's time, and you've shared wonderful insights, and I think it's much needed, especially in the current this current healthcare system. We need more awareness on that how bullying is affecting the culture, how it is creating the toxic culture, and how we can be more vocal about it to protect ourselves from being bullied and to create a healthy culture. So thank you so much. The next session is within 15 minutes. We'll take another 15 minutes break. And then we have the session with Caitlin, right, Valerie? Yeah, and I think you shared the link.
Yep,
Okay.
the link is there. So check out Caitlin Carey's link. That will be in 15 minutes. Thank you so much, you guys. Thank you, Jen.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much. Okay. Bye-bye.